We want to now move into new regional and nationwide church structure, so a chance for us to hear a little bit more about what's going on in some of the other area churches and in the nationwide church. And so I just want to, before I call David and Ryan up here to a time of sharing with you, just a few reflections, not just from my time as interim council member through the transition from Mennonite Church, or the transition at Mennonite Church Canada over the last year and a bit, but just also even how my life has transitioned in the time that I've been on executive council. So I grew up in a congregation where I grew up Mennonite my whole life and had very little understanding of area church and national church, even in how it was structured before. And in a lot of ways, what I cared about was my home congregation and what we were doing on Sunday afternoon after church was done. That's basically what I cared about. And now it's morphed and has evolved into, as I get involved in more of these roles, I recognize that it's more than just my home congregation. And it's more than just my area church. And then as I spend time getting to know people at the national level, it's more than even our national church, because now I'm being challenged to think about it globally when I hear people like Barbara speak and when I hear Arlie challenge us all the time at Executive Council that, yeah, and we're just one more piece of a global Mennonite faith-based church. And so, you know, I've been on a journey of understanding about how we all relate as a faith community. And so as we hear now more stories from Ryan and what's going on in Mennonite Saskatchewan, I just want to challenge all of us that we think locally, we think regionally, we think nationally, and we think internationally. And just when you think you're done thinking, think some more. And so I'll now call on David and Ryan.
I want to just provide a short intro here. If you turn to page 55 in your sermon docs, you will see what you probably have seen before, and that is the new model for our nationwide community of faith at MC Canada. We have been talking a lot about that the last couple of years. I just want to make a couple of brief comments. That restructuring is about renewing our nationwide community of faith to ensure that it continues to be vibrant into the future and connect us into the global community. And the way it is doing this in the new structure is having regional churches and your voice more directly into that structure, engaging it as we bring our experience from the regions, and the regions more setting that agenda and now bringing it back. And if you notice anything today and yesterday, I hope you're noticing that all of a sudden you're hearing a lot more about international witness and nationwide agenda, because that's now my job. That's our job as a region to interpret that more directly to you. And instead of 300 people at an MC Canada Assembly hearing those messages, we have 300 people or 350 here at MCEC hearing that message today. So more people are engaged with that agenda. That's how we want to drive this new structure. Then my dear friend Ryan Siemens is here, my peer, Executive Minister for Mennonite Church, Saskatchewan. We've been in meetings almost monthly for the last year and a half. I think it's been a while. Pre-structure, post-structure, trying to get this thing to work, trying to have these church structures serve you, our congregations, as best as possible. Brian and I sometimes get in early, and when time's available, we grab a supper, and then we go off and have a movie together. So that's been kind of a fun thing to do, to spice up our meeting times together. Ryan's got a passion for the church, big picture thinker, and it was great to have you here, Ryan.
Good afternoon. Go Riders. It is a pleasure and a delight to be here, and a delight to be representative of Mennonite Church Saskatchewan. My title has changed 12 times in the last 3 years. My people know me as conference pastor, though officially I'm executive minister. Yesterday I was inspired by Norm, who is wearing a jacket from Myanmar to represent a people and a place. And so I come wearing the appropriate cultural attire of Saskatchewan. It's true. And I will put this out there. For those who know me well, they know these two things about me. I am a loyal Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan. And second, I sometimes speak before I think. And so 6 weeks ago, when the folks of Mennonite Church Saskatchewan were gathered in Swift Current for our annual general meeting, I was up front like this and introduced both Tim Weeb-Neufeld, who's the executive minister from MC Alberta, and then David Martin. And I shared how we had this idea of let's go to each other's regional churches. In the old way of Mennonite Church Canada, and this isn't bad, it's just we often focused on what we did collectively, which makes sense. But we didn't get to know each other to the level that we should have or that we could have. And maybe going forward, we can do that better. Because it's important that we're connected and related to each other. And so we thought of this time of let's get to know a regional church. And so I was up front explaining this. And I said, going out and representing MC Sask like this, for the first time in my life, I could imagine myself wearing a Rider jersey. And there was a nice laugh. You guys cued in that perfectly. Well, the next morning, Ray Friesen, pastor of Emmaus Mennonite Church, got up front, repeated what I said, and suggested to delegates that I think Ryan admitted he would wear a Rider's jersey. So we're going to take a loonie offering at the back of the church. If you only have toonies, don't worry, put a toonie in and take a loonie out. And we're going to get him a jersey. And so within minutes, $110 was collected, and it was decided more was needed. The Conference of Mennonites in Saskatchewan started in 1959. When we switched to Mennonite Church Saskatchewan, it was very different than MCEC. It wasn't a coming together of three different streams, shall we say. It was just switching the name on our building. It was going from Conference of Mennonites of Saskatchewan to MCEC. And so, lo and behold, I now have a Rider jersey, and it's wearing this Rider jersey that I bring you greetings from your sisters and brothers in Mennonite Church, Saskatchewan. To offer you a little snapshot of who we are, Mennonite Church, Saskatchewan is a community of 28 congregations who have covenanted together to be Christ-centered and sent, as we seek to be communities of grace, joy, and peace. In our 28 congregations, we have a membership of roughly 2,800 members. 40% of our congregations have about 40 attendees or less, and the majority of our congregations would be considered rural. And even our urban ones would probably be considered rural to you too. 15 of our congregations are either in or within an hour's drive of Saskatoon. And then we have five, a cluster of three, and then two others across the north. We have 3 in the west, 2 in the southwest around Swift Current, 2 in Regina, and then 1 about 90 minutes east of Saskatoon. We currently have 38 active credentialed pastors and chaplains. 22 are male, 16 are female, and 11 are under 40. I have a few openings right now, so if you do want to make your way out west, we are a good people to be with. Talk to me later. Oh, wait, what? What, Henry? Sorry.
Henry's available.
David was just offering you to come to Saskatchewan, Henry. Let's talk after. As you no doubt are aware, Saskatchewan is not in the news very often. We try not to be. That's why we put the Trans-Canada where it is. But in the last several months, there have been significant stories that have caught national and even international attention. One that gets me emotional, well, both do actually, and that's the horrific bus accident that happened near Nipawin killing 16 people on their way to a playoff hockey game. And then the other, the not guilty verdict of Gerald Stanley in the tragic death of Colton Bushy. Both of these stories speak to the realities in Saskatchewan. They speak to who we are and also the work of our congregations. What the world witnessed after the accident near Nipawin is an honest expression of who we are. While we don't have any MCEC churches in Humboldt, the mother of the bus driver, Glenn Dirksen, is a member of Carrot River Mennonite Church, and our pastor, Daniel Jansen, presided over that funeral. Coming together in difficult situations, particularly in small town Saskatchewan, even in our larger centers, is what we do. If you're wondering why I look or sound so familiar, it's because on Christmas Day, my family was plastered all over the national news because our Via Rail train seized up in minus 40-degree temperatures, and the tiny town of Spy Hill, about 300 residents, provided warm welcome for the 100 passengers and crew. The town basically turned off their Christmas activities to make sure that we were warm, fed, and in good Christmas cheer. The response from the volunteer fire chief that made all these quick arrangements simply said, "This is what we do. I hope if my family was ever stranded like this, others would help out as well." The prairie hospitality can also be found in the life of our churches, especially when it comes to refugee resettlement. A few years back, when I started as area church minister and was making my rounds to get to know who are these folks in MC Sask, I discovered that 20 of our 28 congregations directly responded to the Syrian refugee crisis. Some of our larger congregations supported multiple families. Some of our rural churches partnered with our urban ones. Others sponsored through their local ministerial, and some held special fundraisers for MCC, who was handling the resettlements. It was a massive response, a response that drew the attention of famed author and Saskatoon resident Jan Martel, who then offered to share his house for a refugee family, and that drew the attention of a local production company that has created a series for City TV called Bridging Borders. And you can actually watch, it's a mixed documentary and reality show that you can watch on City TV's website. Welcoming the stranger, the refugee, is core to our witness and speaks to who we desire to be. But that does not mean that we've got everything mastered in Saskatchewan. In regards to the death of Indigenous young man Colton Bushy and the trial of farmer Gerald Stanley, this speaks to another, often unspoken reality that is also at the core of living where we do. When I moved to Saskatchewan 11 years ago to pastor Grace Mennonite Church in Prince Albert, what we call PA, my worldview opened up in ways that I never fathomed. Prince Albert is at the heart of Treaty 6 territory. It is made up of 40% Indigenous and Métis peoples and serves as a living reminder of a past many of us desire not to remember. The history of colonialism, the reality of the pass system. How many of you grew up and heard of and learned in school about the pass system? How much time do I have, Dave? After the treaties were signed and the Indian Act, as one chief puts it, we signed treaty, we never signed the Indian Act. The Indian Act had a pass system where the reserves were essentially open-air prisons. And so to hunt, to leave, to go to a funeral, you needed a pass. And I worked in a prison for a few years with ministry in Prince Albert, and the passes looked the same. You needed a pass to leave reserve. And so if you went off reserve and you were arrested. And so for 80 years, Indigenous folks could not leave the reserve without permission from the Indian agent. And so that's a part of the past that is hard for us to come to learn. And add that, the ongoing legacy of the Indian residential schools. It demands us to better understand how Canada was developed as a country and why our Indigenous and settler relations are fragile and broken. Understanding that we are all treaty people takes a willingness to relearn our past so that we may all have a better future. In Sask, I would like to briefly highlight 2 ways that we are trying to better educate ourselves and work for a better common future. First is the land claim and work around the young Chippewayan band. If you've not seen the documentary Reserve 107, I highly recommend watching this 30-minute film that beautifully tells the story. In the sake of time, I'm not going to go over it now. It's free, it's online. Google Reserve 107 and spend that 30 minutes watching that story. Secondly, I would like to highlight a little group that we have called Walking the Path. It was a group that was started in the years just prior to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. In Mennonite Church, Saskatchewan, we felt it was vital to be engaged in the Truth and Reconciliation process. So leading up to the national event in Saskatoon, we held several events throughout the province to engage our constituency. In the years since, we continue to walk the path as we seek to build mutual relationships with the people of Muskeg Lake First Nation. In recent years, Harry Lafon, the Executive Director of the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, has joined our circle as we plan events to build relationships between our communities. These are small steps, but important ones as we seek to live well as treaty people. I could go on. I could talk about MCEC for quite some time. I just want to highlight two more things. First, we have spent this last year with Betty Priest in what we called Refresh, Refocus, Renew, to help open ourselves up to God's call in our congregational lives today. From that year together, we plan to spend the next 3 years deepening our walk with Christ, deepening our walk with each other and what it means to be Anabaptist in the 21st century, and then deepening our walk with the world, particularly as we seek to be people of reconciliation. And then last weekend, over 40 of us gathered in Saskatoon with Norm Dick and Sean East as we explored the possibility of starting a relearning community cohort in Saskatchewan. We are grateful for MCEC's willingness to share this resource, and as we move forward together as Mennonite Church Canada, I am excited about the new ways that we can work and help one another. Yes, we are definitely one of the small kids on the block. Being small has its advantages. I grew up at First Mennonite Church in Winnipeg, which has 1,000 members. I pastored a church of 50. I understand the advantages and disadvantages of both. But that's why we have each other. We need to remember that MC Sask, MCEC, and MC Canada is not an office located in Saskatoon or Kitchener or Winnipeg, but rather it is us, a living body called to be a community with one another from Petit Kodiak through Carrot River and to Black Creek. I am delighted and I'm hopeful for the future that we have together. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you for sharing something about MC Sask and your passion for the church. And I just want these folks to know I actually put in $3 to help buy this jersey. But you know, Ryan, you put me in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, who are you going to choose?
Well, this was the thing. Do I get myself a Ticats jersey? Yeah, but then what do I do with JD here and all my Toronto churches? They're going to alienate.
Is there a football team in Toronto?
And
do the fans know? Uh-oh.
And then I saw, like, what's this Western obsession with secular sports? I mean, what's this faith, where's the faith-based thing about this? And I'm thinking, maybe here at MCEC we should model something a little different, something that's a bit more faith-based. So Ryan, today I'm wearing my Friars Briar clergy curling. Friars Briar clergy curling jersey.
You will get me into that one of these days, won't you?
Ryan, thank you, and
May I offer a blessing?
certainly, please offer a prayer for us.
Loving and generous God, we are grateful for the work that you do through MCEC and the community of faith that you have developed here throughout the years. And we look forward to continuing walking the path together as regional churches across Canada as we seek to be faithful to you, to one another, and to the world that you have called us to love and serve. We lift all this work to you, these meetings, the budget, our programs. We put it all into your hands and ask for you to bless it. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.